Okay, welcome to July 2023 Friday Live. Friday Live is a informal off-the-cuff meetup that is sponsored by FM BetterForms, a web publishing platform for a FileMaker. So thanks everybody for coming out this week. We have a kind of a casual meetup this particular week. We've got a number of topics, and we'll jump right into right away. Our main feature this week, or this month I should say, is going to be questions and answers. What I want to do is I am going to jump into things, and we'll get cracking right away with some what's new sections. All right. This month we're going to be featuring a couple things again, just quickly. We have Christina and Hassan, who are going to be presenting just some more HTML, CSS, and Vue basics. We also have a couple new things that we're going to announce. We have a new helper file, so Eb is going to be demonstrating that. That's just in beta, so it won't be fully released yet until maybe next week. We have a couple other new features, an actions editor. Michael from our team is going to be demonstrating that, and a new BF file upload proxy, which is a new feature that Andrew has built, but he's not in today, so I'll be demonstrating that for him. What I want to do now is to flip over our screen, and maybe Christina and Hassan, if you guys want to jump in. And I'll just stop the share.
Dan probably needs about 5 to 10 minutes.
Okay, that's fine. What we'll do is we'll swap it around again. And I'm going to jump to my screen in that case. And I want to talk about a new feature that we have. And it is basically, it's an upload proxy. And I want to show you what that looks like. One of the problems that people have had is when dealing with containers, BetterForms has been, I don't want to say a challenge, but we've kind of taken a different route to handle containers. FileMaker handles container data fairly natively. And in order to keep our security paradigm, that means our BetterForms itself doesn't talk to your file directly. It talks through a helper file. We don't actually write data directly into containers. And what we've done is we've created a new feature now to make this a little bit easier. And I'll just show you what that looks like. Just give me a quick second here to pull that up. And I'll show you, let me have a quick look. This is a quick demo here, just so we can get an idea of what this looks like. Basically, in the past, when you manage containers, you had to, we really recommend using AWS and S3, right? If you're using any type of containers that's getting served out to the public. The main reason for that is from a security aspect, you can control the links, you can control the access, you can have it super available, so your data is durable and it's high availability. And in addition to that, you don't burden FileMaker at all. So your data is not going in and out of FileMaker. You can also make those links permanent, or they can be on an authenticated basis, so that the person has to be logged into the app and so on. So it's really flexible to use S3, but not everybody wants to navigate the S3 setup. We have documentation in past Friday Lives. We've talked about how to do that and how to set S3 up, and it's pretty easy. One of our community, Jason Wood, wrote a great custom function. We made some small contributions to it as well, and that generates pre-signed URLs, and that actually makes S3 like a snap. So what I want to show you is, I want to show you a different way of doing this now, where you don't actually need S3. In the past, if you were using a widget like Uppy or DropZone in BetterForms, we'd use a third-party service, something like File.io, which was an ephemeral file storage. The file would go up to that storage and then come back down again. And what I'm going to do is just pull up another drawing here quick. And what would happen is the file would go up to this temporary file storage. So now what we've done is we've actually built our own temporary file storage system, so that you don't have to worry about configuring it, and you have a higher level of security as well. So basically what our new file proxy does is, your BetterForms app normally talks to your FileMaker server, and when a user goes to drop a file now and wants to upload a file, what will happen is that file will immediately upload to a temporary S3 bucket, and the data will be encrypted, and then BetterForms will talk to your FileMaker server and say, here's where the file is and how to fetch it. Your FileMaker server will fetch that file on its own time, and that's really important. And then it can populate the container. And the reason I say on its own time is now you'll be able to do things like multiple gigabyte uploads and, drop hundreds of files at a time if you wanted onto this upload widget, and not have to worry about burdening your FileMaker server, and you're not having to worry about the storage there. So let's have a look at how that works. Over here, I have a demo file, and this is going to be available. Andrew will be releasing this next week. He's just hasn't released the documentation on it yet, but there is an example page, and it has pretty much all the information here. I have a document table over here, and it has 0 records at the moment. And I'm just going to turn on my desktop icons here, and I'm going to grab some icons. And I have, oh, wait, let's not grab too many here. Let's start with one file. So I drop this file on here, and Uppy uploads that, and that calls a hook to FileMaker, and it uploads the file. This file is actually in the container now. So it is an actual file that's sitting inside the container. If I copy and paste it, you can see it's an actual file. It's not a reference. So whether you have internal storage, external storage, doesn't matter anymore. But the more important part is for people who want to keep their files on their server. This is a great option. I'm just going to delete that record again, and I'm just going to refresh this. And the example here is using Uppy, which is a file upload widget. It does not need to be configured like this. It can be just a button that opens up a drop down. It can be programmatic, so you don't even see a button. Anything you want is super configurable. One of the advantages of using a file upload widget like this is it uses multi-part upload. So if you dropped a 2 gigabyte file on here, say a big movie from your summer vacation, then that file will get split and upload to S3 in the most efficient way possible. In fact, we've done a number of tests internally with another project that we're working on, and we find that communicating through S3 through this here versus directly to FileMaker is about somewhere between twice to about 5 times faster, depending if you're uploading and downloading into containers. So we can get it really efficient here. So let's try this. I'm going to grab a few files here, 1, 2, 3, that's maybe 8 files, and let me just erase this. Where'd that file come from? There we go. So erase those. All right. And we'll grab these guys and we'll drop them on there. So there's 8 files there of varying sizes, 4 megabytes, most of them. Some of them are small, some of them are large. And the way this particular demo is configured is as soon as all the files are uploaded, it calls FileMaker. It says, here's a stack of files, and all the files get dropped in. And now I got 8 files into a container. Even the file download, since your FileMaker server is sitting in the cloud, usually, the file downloads can even run in parallel, so you can spin different threads up. So let's have a look at the code a little bit more detail and what's required to take advantage of this feature. I'm going to start with the FileMaker side here. So let me jump to, I can actually just log in, and let me grab the link. Where did it go? There. Okay, so this demo has a bunch of instructions on it. The real piece of the upload is just a very small component. It's actually just this here. So that's really all you need to add to your BetterForms page. It's just an empty div. And then the other half of that is in our on-form load, we have an initialize Uppy instruction here, and it's a bit of JavaScript in here. We're going to make this, we're looking at how we can make this available as a widget, so you can just more or less drag it or paste it into your app and how that would work. But at the moment, you can just copy that from the instructions. It's fairly well documented, and you can go through there. What it's doing is as soon as its files are dropped on, it's uploading right away. So let's look at what the upload hook looks like in FileMaker. All right, so let's go to our utility hook. So it's running a utility hook, and in this case, it's passing an argument of upload handler in case there's other things on the page. This is just a common design pattern with a dispatcher. And I'm just going to jump to this first script here because they're exactly the same. Basically, what's happening here is we're calling a script called upload handler, and we're passing it a files array. So the web widget is going to pass your app a files array. And within that files array, let's open up that. Oops, it's just passing the argument there. I'm just using some JSON to pass that. And then within the files array, or sorry, within the files handler, I have a pretty simple script. All it's doing is it's grabbing the files key from that's being passed in. I can remove that. And it's looping through those files. If you don't do this already, make this 100%. We've talked about this so many times, but it's so important, is add an extra script step into every one of your loops called, we call it emergency exit, but you can call it anything you want, escape hatch or something like that. And basically this script is an empty script. And all it does is it has commit record or revert or halt in it, but they're commented out. So there's no actual executable instructions in the script. And what happens here is, if you accidentally, of course, write a loop that does not terminate, what's going to end up happening is every time you call it, it's going to run another thread, and it's going to blow up your server after maybe 4 or 5 times. So instead of doing that and having to pull everybody off FileMaker and everybody complaining, what you do is as soon as you realize that you have a non-terminated script, is you go into this script here and you enable an instruction and hit save. And then what's going to happen is that script is running on the server, and the script that's actually running this loop is cached. So it doesn't, any changes you make to this script won't affect it until it gets rerun again. But the scripts that it calls, the subscripts, are not cached. So in this case, this script would not be cached, and that halt will stop the execution on the server. All right, great way of not killing the entire server there. All right. So anyhow, we can ignore that. So moving forward, we have a files array. We're basically exiting if it's empty. And then we're just doing very simple FileMaker, go to layout, create a new record. We're setting the field for the file name, which is the document name. So in this case, I don't think we have it on this layout, but it's the name of that document. And then we're doing an insert from URL. And then the insert from URL is it's inserting into my container field, and it's using file JSON get element file URL. So it's using, how do we open this up here? Is it this one? Specify entire contents. Yeah, there. It's for the URL itself. It's getting the URL that the front end passed to it. So there's no coding really that you really have to do other than an insert from URL. We commit the record because we're running on server, and we jump to the next record. This is knocking one off the array, and it's just looping through, and that's it. So that's all it takes to bring in files from the web now. So this feature will be available. The BF proxy will be available over the next week or so. Andrew will release that. We've already got the demos and everything made. It's been up and stable, and we've been using it already, so it seems pretty good. If you have any questions about that, do let us know. And if you want to give it a try, look for the announcement in Slack. Does anybody have any questions on that before we jump on?
Charles,
Yes.
is there charges for the storage?
No. This is ephemeral storage. So what's going to happen is your file is automatically deleted after 1 day.
Oh, a day. So it's temporary only.
Temporary, yeah.
Oh,
If you wanted to have your own storage, it's really easy. We already have examples for that, and then you would control that.
okay.
Right. I think that's kind of the best paradigm there, because then, your files are controlled by your ecosystem and not our ecosystem.
Right, yeah, I was just wondering, whoa, okay, this is pretty cool, but who's paying for the storage cost? But I didn't catch that 1 day thing.
Yeah, the storage cost is almost negligible for us because the even if you put gigabytes, it's only there for a day. So it's pretty cheap. So we can absorb that cost.
Right, okay.
And one other thing here too is I'll just show you something that's kind of neat here is on this upload handler right here. You can call the upload handler. You can call it right now here. It's calling it as perform script. But if we actually, oops. If we actually enable this one and disable this one, we can run it on server. So that means the hook will return right away. And in its own time, FileMaker will download those files. Right. So depending on your connection speed and how performant FileMaker is, that can, maybe take a little longer time. If you really wanted to get fancy, you could actually spin this up here, this part here, this loop, and have this section here of code run in its own subscript and then run that, call it as perform script on server, and don't wait for execution. That'll actually create multiple threads. You do have to keep in mind that you don't want to create too many. And then you can actually get parallel downloads if it's really important. But for most things, I don't think it's really too critical that you download the files super fast. In fairness, you have a day to download them. The reason we put the ephemeral storage at 1 day is because if for some reason something blows up in your FileMaker server, it's offline or something like that, and you don't fetch that, you still can rerun that inbox hook and not lose the file. All right, I'll just demo it one more time quick and we'll jump on to the next thing here. So here it is again here. We'll blow out these records. There we go. And drag a record on. Gets uploaded to S3. And there's our document there. Right, we can do that with multiple documents as well. Uppy's kind of smart. If you drag the same document on twice, it won't upload it again. Right, you can see this one's quite a bit bigger, 4 megabytes. That took a little bit longer. And then you can see the files getting created here, or you should. Well, there might be something. I might change something in the code there when I was playing around just now. So we can check that out. But at any rate, that's the way it works. So, all right, I'm going to jump back.
You changed perform script on server. That was the only thing.
Yeah, and I wonder if maybe I buggered something up or something like that, or did an experiment with something. I'm not sure. So that's okay. All right, I want to jump to Christina and Hassan, and they're going to demonstrate. They're going to jump to our dev corner and talk about some HTML and some other stuff.
Yep, so we're going to be continuing our dev corner with Vue basics, and we'll be diving right into the details of Vue's v4 directive. There are a few different syntaxes that we can use to our advantage, and we'll be demoing them. So San will be screen sharing and we will dive into it. So the first syntax that we will be exploring is the in syntax. For the data shape, let's take a look at what kind of data we have. We've got a model.items, and in here, this is an array with objects inside, and we've got 2 keys, children and message. So for this first example, we'll focus on the key message, and going back to our HTML, we have our v4 loop where we have the syntax item in model.items, where model.items is the source data and item is the name you've given the current item being iterated on. And we're using the template syntax to render and display. Having an index can be helpful, and one application of using an index would be if you're doing a list and you want the even indexes to be a different color. You could add some extra styling logic for that using the index key. So the index key would be the second parameter, and this is how we're displaying it.
Yeah, and additionally, I can show an example right now of where like index would be useful. So for example, if you want to do like conditional rendering, you can do something like this. And then like over here now you can see which one's even and like have if statements that would show you what you want. So having an index is pretty useful in a lot of different use cases.
Right. So we can go right into our second example, and this will be for destructuring. We can use JavaScript destructuring in v-for loops. And from here, we still have our source data model.items, and we're using the in syntax, and we're using JavaScript destructuring to grab only the message key. So what this does is ignores the children key that we have in our model.items and only pulls out the one item that you want. So it helps with just cleaner code, and it's quite useful. Actually, I didn't know this was possible until I was preparing for this, and that's really cool to see. We can also get the index here, and that will be the second parameter.
Oh, I see. So you, instead of just saying message without the quotes,
Yeah, you can just call the key directly.
Yeah, just message the specific key, not the entire.
I did not know that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Wow. Okay, that's cool. Shortcut. The funny thing is, there's so many cool shortcuts you can do and things, but it's like, unless you've bothered to learn them and then you have another way and it's not really that much longer of a path, I kind of just do the long way that I can remember, but I'm going to try to do this. So I guess the advantage there is I can just call that one key and I can drill into other ones. I wonder if I could say like message, comma, and then the other keys as well. I'm going to experiment with that. That's cool.
Yep. It definitely uses the JavaScript destructuring. So we could do a comma children, but that key right now is an array, so you'd have to loop over it again. But yeah, so the advantage is definitely if you have like 10 keys and you only want the one, you don't need to think about the others, you just can grab a message. And for our next example, we'll actually show how to do nested for loops. And in our model.items, we had that children key that was nested. It was an array inside. And from there, we will have our parent loop, which is going over model.items, and we will then have a inner loop, which will go over the children.
Right here, I'm just adding a span inside, and then we can go over both items here. So for example, now we still have the initial one, and then now if I want to see the child item.
Yeah, so for scope, each v-for loop has access to the parent scope. So the parent won't have access to the child, but the child has access to the parent. And we're still displaying this with the template syntax. We have another syntax we can demo, and this is the of syntax. You can use the of syntax as item of model.items. And this is closer to how JavaScript does iterations compared to our other examples. JavaScript uses the of syntax, and this is just Vue making it easier. We can also loop through objects.
So yeah, over here, the of syntax is basically functionally does the exact same thing as the v-for. Of the in syntax, item in and item of. So right here, this is of and accomplishing pretty much the same thing.
So are there any technical differences between those two? Do you think like the of versus in? Like, would there be a case where you would use of, or is it more of a,
I don't think there is any technical differences. Christina, do you want to go more in depth on that? But I believe they're about the exact same.
Yeah, it's just to be more similar to how JavaScript works versus
right?
I
Cool.
believe, yeah. And
Cool.
Christine, what was your next example? I'll get on with that.
Yeah, so the next example can be looping through objects. These were looping through arrays, so we will go into how to loop through an object. For looping through an object, we can use the v-for to iterate through the properties of the object, where you can grab the value for each of the keys. And in the template syntax, we will render. So this,
So right here.
so you can continue.
Yeah, so right here is the object we're using. And now we're just going through the object and we got the value and it just printed out the whole thing.
Yes, so
And
we've iterated
So
through
this
the
would
keys.
be really valuable when you don't know what the shape of the object is and you want to display all the properties in that object. Like
Yes.
there could be a first name field, or it might not even be a key for the first name field. So it'll just kind of dump all of that data there.
Right,
Yeah.
how the syntax works is it's using JavaScript's object.key, so it definitely does just go through by the order of whatever the keys are and would print it.
And over here, like how we had the index, we can also add in a key over here. And now we'll also have the keys and the values. So right here, like we have author, Jane Doe, we have each key associate and their value. And we can even to this, we can add index as well. And then have index as well in here.
Sweet, that's awesome. So we can loop through arrays, we can get the value, key, and index of an object, and we can also use v-fors to take in an integer. So we can do ranges with the v-for loops, and how that syntax works is n in 10, where this is repeated on a range of 1 to n, where n is our 10, and it's definitely not 0 based, so it will print out 1 to 10. This I
It's
would
kind
say
of funny that it's not zero based, huh? That's kind of like a anomaly, but it makes sense. But sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
So the next example we have is nesting. So we have v-fors and v-ifs, and here's what it would look like to nest them together. And if by any chance you have a v-for and a v-if on the same element, the v-if always takes priority. So it will calculate the truthiness of the v-if first and then move on to the v-for. Though it's recommended to have them on separate elements. So maybe you should have a div element with a v-if first, and then inside you have your for loop. So it's just more clean and easier to read. And the priority is clear to whoever is reading the code next.
Yeah,
So
this is. I was gonna say, yeah, this is another example kind of the conditional rendering. Over here, it's v-if to do is complete. And as you can see over here, they're set to false and there's one true. So the ones that are false are showing because it's which ones are not complete. This is a good way of showing what you want to show for your data.
right. And I noticed here Hassan added a template tag. That's quite fun because what that does is in the DOM, when it gets rendered, you do not see the template tag. So it just gets printed as a block of LIs. Whereas if Hassan was to change this to a div, you would see the div element and then the LIs inside. What the template syntax does is it's a wrapper that doesn't get displayed to the DOM, and it results in whatever was iterated on in the loop.
So I guess the real power of that, that would be getting into sort of like advanced targeting of CSS, but it basically means now that the parent and the repeating children are right adjacent to each other, and there's no wrapper there, which is kind of powerful when you want to target from a CSS perspective.
Sweet, and that is our more detailed V4s. Hopefully that taught you something new, definitely taught me something new. And that's what we've got for this segment. Charles, you're muted.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, guys. That was great. I definitely learned something. There's a quick trick in there that I did not know. All right, we're going to flip it over to Michael, and he's going to demonstrate a new feature that we're coming out with.
All right, hello everybody. Can everyone see my screen?
Looks good.
All right, cool. So the past couple months I've been working on a new actions editor, which I'm going to be demoing today. Before we get started, I just want to give a quick run over of what named actions are, for those of you who don't know. So essentially a named action is a grouping of actions which sits inside of page info, and you're able to call it from anywhere inside of your page, which makes your code very reusable and just keeps your page looking a lot cleaner. So currently when you want to edit a named action, I do inside the page info under the object called named actions. This is just a long list of all of your named actions and all of the actions inside of it. So this way of editing named actions has a couple of pros and cons. The pros is that you can easily search for information inside of your named actions, and it allows you to easily replace values when you have to do mass changes. However, the issue is that it's very slow to build them out, since if you want to copy snippets, you have to go back over to the page builder page, search for the snippet you want, copy it, then bring it back here and paste it in. So that's typically a bit slow and it's not great. However, what I've been building is a new kind of UI-based actions editor. So you'll be able to see it up in this top tab here, and you can click on the action scripts. So let me just delete this one. So as you can see, all of your named actions are on the side here. You can see your login action or on form load. You're also able to search through all of your action scripts. So I can search for login, and it comes up here, or I can just search for on form load, and then it'll come up here as well. And then this will also let you create new scripts very easily. So I can just create a new script, give it a name, Friday live demo, and save that. And now once I have my named action, I can click the add action button, which will allow me to easily build out my named action. So let's say I want to send an alert. I can click the alert action. And you get a little preview here of what information is inside of all of your actions. So for the alert, you have like a title and then the type. And then over here, we still have a JSON editor, since that makes it very flexible to edit. And I can make changes in here as well. So I can just say, you have called the Friday live demo named action. Then I can save that. But now let's say I want to add some other actions onto here. So I can continue to click add action. Let's say I want to add a function. And then I also want to add a run utility hook. That's great. So let's say that run some sort of Friday live utility hook. But let's say I made this and I realized I actually want the utility hook to run first. So with this new editor, you're easily able to drag the actions up and down into whatever position you want. And it makes it really quick and easy for editing your named actions. And it helps keep the whole kind of workflow very concise. Then if I need to delete stuff, I'll just click the delete button and it will remove them. And similar to the page info tab, none of your changes will actually be saved until you click the save page button. So you just have to be aware of that. But overall, it does make it a lot easier and more understandable to add and edit named actions. What else? I guess also the one possible or the one slight downside with the action scripts tabs, there's no way to search globally through all of the action scripts. We're going to possibly look into a way to do this in the near future. However, in the meantime, when we deploy this, which will hopefully be the next week or next couple weeks, you'll still have access to the page info and the named actions here. So if you need to change a variable name or just need to search through all the named actions, you can still do it here. Yeah, and that's kind of an overview of what the new actions editor is going to look like and how it works. Does anyone have any questions about it? Comments?
Don't all speak at once, guys. All right, this looks great, Michael. Thank you. All right, awesome. We're going to jump over to Soheb. He's going to demonstrate one more new thing in the platform for this month. It's a new helper file.
So basically we have few new features. We have the improved version of the helper file. It's in beta testing, but we are going to release this in next week. In the inbox, we have few new features like preserve record. What it will do when you will delete the records from inbox, if the preserve record is checked, then it will not be cleaned out from the inbox. Let's suppose we have few preserve records in the inbox and we are gonna clean this inbox table.
Still file maker under the hood, huh? There we go.
So it will not delete the preserve records, which we don't want to delete. So I think this is one improvement we have. Also, we have the new list view for this inbox table and few filters as well. And we have sorting on each column. You can scroll out as well. And then we also created the master detail view for the users, and we also grouped out few of the stuff there. The token, we have the tokens section separately and few other as well. You can search here for the users. And another thing, we also have the preference layout where you can enable user on creation. You can disable this as well. If the new user record is created by default, you can set it out in the preferences table. Whenever the new user record created by default, it will be enabled or disabled. You can decide here. Yeah, I think that's all we have in the new helper file.
Awesome. Great. Thank you. So, and then we'll have that out in, this is again for beta, so early testing. And it's really, I mean, it's the same helper file underneath the hood, which is some new UI, but it will be in the files section probably about mid next week there. Anybody have any questions or suggestions on that? We've gathered most of the features ended up coming from our feedback that everybody gave us on the existing helper files. So we're appreciative of that. All right, we're going to jump to our main thing. It's some questions and answers, and we'll finish off with that for today. Right, we had a number of questions and answers. Not too many were submitted, so we kind of stole some from our Slack group there. The first one is passwordless login, and somebody had asked where a user would visit an app, and in the process of visiting the app, they would enter, say, their email or maybe some other contact ID, some kind of identifier, a locator, and click a button, and then that app would then send that user some type of authentication, one-time password or a passwordless type access. So in this case, it was either an SMS or it might be through email, etc. And you may have used some sites that are like this. There's a few different ways for the answer for that. There's a few different ways of doing that, and it really depends, and it's not a one-size-fits-all by any means here. So I just wanted to mention a couple of the ways of addressing that strategy. The easiest one is to use OAuth and Auth0, because Auth0 does that authentication out of the box. And Michael may have a demo for us. I'm not sure. We'll check with him. And basically, the idea there is you just put an OAuth box, a button on your page. We talked about this in about 3 Friday Lives ago. You pop this on your page. That takes you to Auth0's account. You configure your one-time password access there. How do you want it to be through SMS and so on? And that will send you a text. You enter the text on the screen, and then from there, it takes you to log in, and that logs you in as a fully authenticated BetterForms user. So what that means is every hook will have an ID user attached to the hook, and there's nothing else you need to do there. The user won't automatically log out. You still have to programmatically log them out. Another mechanism of doing this is with a cookie. And the idea here is a cookie is, it's kind of a roll your own security, but it makes sense for certain applications. For example, if you were to, somebody was to visit the site and they start filling out an application, and then you don't want to even capture their email or anything, but if they leave the site because of the nature of it's on a device or something like that, and they come back to the site and you want them to stay logged in, then a cookie is a really, really good use case for that. So you drop a cookie into the browser, and that's going to have some unique ID, and maybe it can be multiple cookies, maybe a locator of some sort, but usually a UID for the user. And then every hook that user has that cookie. And BetterForms has the ability to have what we call global before hooks. So when you've probably seen this in your hook sets, I'm just going to close this and do this. There we go. All right. So if I just look at a typical hook set, there's a few applications in this example file here. But if we look at the, let's look at this one here. Inside the common hook set, there's an area called global before and global after. In the global before, this is a script that runs between or in front of every single hook that comes through the business file. So at this point here, you could be checking for the presence of that cookie, and maybe depending on the layout that they're on, govern the actions of the user. So you can roll your own like that as well. It's a little bit more work, but it does definitely make sense for certain types of issues. All right. Any questions on those kind of password type logins?
Yeah, Charles, I had a question. That's interesting and great. That just occurs to me. Well, it's kind of a question, an open question. I was just realizing I want to set up I need a password reset system. And I was for it's multi-file, but that doesn't really matter. So it's all going to go through a controller file, a FileMaker file.
Right, exactly.
Can talk to the other files. So, and I was thinking, oh, maybe BetterForms. Maybe I should do this in BetterForms, because then I can just send people like a link. So does that make sense? So they have like a one-time.
So if I'm understanding you correct, Ben, you're saying that maybe you would build the UI system for resetting the passwords in BetterForms, but it's actually resetting FileMaker files. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. It occurred to me. I'm building a controller file that it's sort of like, it's nice because it's a contained thing and it can talk to various files. So depending on who they are, they might need to also reset their password in a few files at a time. It's a company and the different people use different files,
Right.
right?
So the controller file would go to all your
It knows. Yeah.
files or family of files, and it would reset the passwords for that person's account or create the account and things like that. Yeah, you could definitely. That's actually kind of a neat use case for BetterForms.
Yeah.
Because the advantage there.
Sorry,
is
you go
that-
for it. Yeah,
and
I
you
was
could
thinking it.
probably do
Good.
some of it in WebDirect as well if you wanted to, but you can definitely send them a smart link and then do that workflow.
Yeah, I was originally thinking, I was sort of, I know how it works, and then I suddenly thought like the front end. So it'd be great, just email them a link, and we'll do it all through company emails. They'll get a message back to their company email if they don't get it, you know, for that sort of one-time authentication.
Yeah, definitely stuff you can do, and check out Auth0's
Yeah,
on all the
yeah.
features because they have a ton of, I mean, this is an identity provider. That's what they do. You know, they just provide login or authentication technically. So there's a ton of ways of configuring apps as well. And between that, you can actually use them to connect with your FileMaker and then share some of the same credentials between those FileMaker proper apps and BetterForms apps if you wanted to. So there's lots of options in there.
Cool.
All right. We talked about this one already as a feature release. Want to upload documents, and that's our new BF file proxy, which will be out next week. So I'll leave that one here. This one came up this week and about mobile font size. And somebody had asked, well, how do I control the size of my fonts on a mobile screen? So Hassan, did you want to do a quick demo of looking at breakpoints like small, medium, and that kind of thing?
Yeah, I'll do a quick example of this because this is fairly basic. So first I'll show what this application will be right here. So over here, you see the font size is changing as the screen changes. It's getting bigger and bigger, or however you want to set it. So how this is happening is using Tailwind responsive design breakpoints. So small is 640 pixels and below, medium is 768 to 1024, and so on. So in code, this is fairly simple. Your default would be just text small, because that would be the lowest breakpoint. And then a medium, you could put what you want, like text XL here, and LG text 3XL. So as you change your screen, the font size would change as well. And say you don't want to use Tailwind specific breakpoints, and you want to have like a custom breakpoint, like, I don't know, like 320 pixels, like half of this. You can also do that using Tailwind, where you just write max 320 pixels, and then you just write your text size. And I'll show an example of this as well. So now when I go over here to 320 pixels, my font's massive, because that's what I set it as, but like right above, it'll be the text small. And this is a nice way of just, you can use this for more things than just font. For your Tailwind breakpoints, is that we kind of do mobile responsiveness for the rest of the app as well, where you can just set small breakpoints, medium breakpoints, or whichever you'd like, or even custom breakpoints. And that was just a quick demo of using Tailwind to have mobile responsiveness for font sizes.
Awesome. Thank you. So hopefully that, I think Dan had posted that. Hopefully that gets you moving forward on that. All right, there's another one, and this isn't actually a question, but it's something I see all the time, and I just want to mention. I don't know how many non-BetterForms users are in our audience today. Usually it's about 50%, but it might be a bit lower today. But I just want to mention this really, really quick. And it's basically where do you start when you're either learning or you're starting to build something? And the biggest mistake that I see people make is they will want to add every widget and everything into some kind of an app, and none of it really is finished. And it doesn't matter if it's BetterForms, if it's FileMaker, I see it all the time. You want to add all the cool stuff and have it visually looking like it's working. But then when somebody goes to use the app, nothing works because you've only finished 1 or 2 bits. So one of the best ways to start off is to grab the low-hanging fruit that has usually the highest ROI. So that might be some type of a smart link type application where somebody receives something, they interact with the data, and then that's the end of the workflow. And then right away you can get that deployed. It's a great way of learning. We have some smart link templates and such as well. So that'll get you off and running. Next question we had was, I want to control who is invited into my app. Somebody had posted this in the Slack, and basically their app is private, so they don't want to have just a general sign up workflow, and they want to control who they invite. The main solution to doing this, the developer solution, is to say, I will add every user that I want into the user table in BetterForms. But it's actually not the best way of doing that, because then you have to sort of jump through some extra hoops. What's easier to do is you invite only the users that should have access to the system. So if I have a user in my table that should have access, I would send them a smart link to a login page. When I get to that login page, I would have an on-form request in there. The on-form request would check the query and check the temporary token that I've given that user, the invitation token, we'll call it. From there, they will, if they are allowed to register, you will let a regular registration workflow. And if not, then you say, sorry, you can't register for this app. And then also on your main page of your application, you don't put the sign up button on visibly. So you still have the page, and a random person still wouldn't be able to sign up, but you control everything just through that token. So that's a really easy way of doing that. It's just basically by an invite workflow only. And here's an example of a link where it's in my page, login, sign up, and then question mark token equals, and this would be some type of UUID. If you have any questions, folks, please just jump right in there. I'm going to jump on to our next one here. Is I've published a solution from dev to production, and one of the pages does not come over. This just actually came up this week. And the short answer is only pages that have navigational slugs are deployed, and this is done intentionally. So if we kind of go back to an app here, I'm just going to go to my demo app. I have this demo is at version 50, and I've had a number of pages that were modified, and my production is, well, this is 50 edited, so that's going to be 51, and my production staging, or sorry, my production environment is at version 50, so it hasn't been it doesn't have these pages. If I have a page in here, quite often we want to have a page in our app that's kind of a scrap or a junky or a test page, or maybe it's a bunch of components and things like that that you have, that's just a workspace. We don't really want to deploy that with our app. We're working on some under the hood optimizations where we take a lot of the schema from your page and we pack it up into the initial load of the app. And that means navigating from page to page is instant. And because of that, we don't want to bring in all the cruft along with it. Right. So, and you may have some sensitive stuff on those pages as well. So basically only pages that the developer is explicitly given a navigational slug to will be deployed. So for example, I have this offline, let me find this, perform JavaScript and web viewer page. And it's just, let me just get rid of that. As soon as I get rid of this page, you'll see that BetterForms will remind you that this page does not have a navigational slug, and that's okay. It's just a warning, and I can save that. Now, when I deploy this, that page will not be deployed. All right, so that's a way for you as a developer to control what actually goes into your final app, and make sure that if you have some new test page like verify 2, I might have something like that, that I don't actually deploy that in my production app.
Charles.
Yes.
So on that note, when you're pushing from dev to production, is there any way of excluding some of the settings in the app?
What would an example of that be, Dave?
So let's say I put in a feedback component that's baked in, like that one line JavaScript, whatever that, you know, somebody can input on, but I don't want that to be in the live system. So when I've been moving it from dev to production, the feedback button ends up in the live system.
Right. Okay, there's a couple ways of handling that. That's really interesting. So you basically have a beta feature,
Yeah,
that you want to hide.
well,
But
I want it in the dev, right? When, you know, I
Yeah.
get guys going through, and then they can, it's almost like your, you know, report a bug thing, right?
Yeah.
So I don't want that in the live one, right? But that feature, you throw in the settings inside
Yeah,
that.
and that's a tricky one because this one here is added into the DOM inserts, right? So if I go into settings here
Yeah,
and I go into here,
Yeah.
it is, I mean, is it this app here? Yeah, this is a different app. So
One
this
line.
app, this doesn't have it, but it would be a line in here. It'd
Yeah.
be some line in here. And I don't want in the production.
right.
Don't have an explicit way of doing that at the moment. You could control its use in JavaScript. If it's a third-party tool, there you could conditionally load it. It's a little bit of code to do that and do that based on the host name or the domain name. So that
Yeah.
is possible. Not clean. We don't have a way of doing that in the app itself. What you can do if it's just a feature, if it's just like if it's this kind of thing here, like using a third party, you'd have to do it with JavaScript. If it's something that you've built into the app, like for example, Michael was working on that Actions tab. Well, that Actions tab has actually been in the editor for a number of months now, but it hasn't been available. It's been hidden behind a feature.
Mhm.
So the tab is actually here on this page, but it's hidden behind this feature, so you don't see it on my account. And that's why this particular account doesn't show it. But if I actually refresh my page, the Actions tab will come in because I've switched accounts here. So you can hide things. To do that, we've talked about a little bit about in the past about using HAM, our authorizations module, and that's what we use internally to do that, to hide those features. So, but it's not really getting rid of it. It's still hackable, if you will.
Yeah, no. So it was just more, if you're doing something like that where you're hiding stuff going from, dev to production or whatever, then, can you hide stuff in the DOM?
Yeah, but through JavaScript, you just don't load it. You conditionally load it. So, so that's kind of how that would work. If it's something like this particular one, this particular company you can programmatically hide this on certain domains as well. So if you check their docs, we use marker.io for this.
I never thought I'll check that on the.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool. All right. One other thing here too is this is not really a question, but it's something that did come up, and we saw this just recently, and it's I'm copying pages to production. And can you add a way for me to copy pages between dev and production environments? We don't currently have a direct way of copying pages, but I want to sort of first fully understand why somebody would do this. So let's look at some environments for a second. And I have some pages here, and I have some pages down here. The time that we need to physically copy something from up here and bring it down to here, and it's only a single page, is when we basically have really bad code hygiene, right? We're not maintaining our environments, and we may have a whole bunch of environments here. And in this one, I have something changed over here, and I have something else changed over here, and I want some combination down here, and we're mixing, matching. And instead, what we should start to do is start to take a little bit more logical approach and say, this is where I'm editing stuff. This is where I'm deploying it to. We want to be able to basically destroy this environment and recreate it every time we deploy. And that's effectively what happens when you deploy. All right. We blow out this environment and we rebuild it all completely, all the data. So it all gets its own set of data. So it's totally standalone. Instead of like manually copying and moving pages between environments and things, we currently don't have support to work on multiple environments and to merge this environment into that. And that's something we've looked at, but it's not that it's so tricky, but is it warranted? Does it warrant the development of it? And we're not really sort of totally sold on the need for it. But what you can do is you can, again, hide different things, hide stuff in the app. We have a ton of stuff in the editor that's not available, right? There's a ton of things. I don't want to show you where they are because then you go start playing with a bunch of broken stuff. But there's stuff that's been deployed that's not available directly. You don't directly see it. They have they're hidden underneath different nav slugs and things like that, or they're hidden underneath feature flags. And that's probably the best way, I think, to do that instead of having those environments. The other thing to think about is when you should have these and maintain these environments. I see a lot of people, because we come from this FileMaker world, they just jump into here, into this production environment. And because we've given you the ability to edit it, of course they do. And now they got this fork in their code because they've changed something in production and they haven't hot patched it back into development. Right. We do that as well. We occasionally edit something in more often in staging than in production, but we edit something, but we make sure that we hot patch whatever it is back into our development branch. And the only time we do that is when we are at a state where we can't deploy. Maybe something's broken. So you're editing something, you're working on a version 2 of something, and instead of creating a new page for that version 2, you started hacking up version 1 of it. And now you can't deploy because it's not finished or it's got a bug. So for those times, a hot patch makes sense if it's needed, but otherwise try not to edit the stuff in here. Have this thing locked. That's only it's a UI thing. It stops the data from being edited, and try to keep your edits up in here. If you need to do some type of a deploy to test to allow public testing, we have a staging environment. That's the whole purpose of it. By creating the staging environment, you can do one of a few things here. You can have this running the new version of code. So this code would be deployed into here, and you can start to test that. Depending on which database that you have hooked up, you may have this hooked up to your dev data and this one hooked up to your dev data. You can do something like that. So now they can actually go in and you can have some broken things. Or what might make more sense is to have this staging hooked up to your production data. Right, that's how our staging environment is currently hooked up, but we're actually changing that because it has some problems as well. And a holy grail, or the best solution, is to have 3 separate databases. This one's not as fun for maintaining and things like that, but it is better for testing. And you have development, staging or test, and production, and 3 separate databases in the back end. Front end, the BetterForms side's a piece of cake to maintain these things. You can roll forward, roll backwards, you can deploy, move them around, do whatever you want. FileMaker side, not so easy. We recommend something like Auto by Proofgeist. It's a great product and we use it ourselves. And that allows you to make these deployments, right? But there are other dev tools as well for that. Just going to clean this up. And we'll just jump on to our next, if anybody has any questions about those environments. If not, we'll jump on to our next. Couple more questions for today. Somebody asked, I want extra help, but I don't have the budget for it. So what can I do? There's a few things you can do. We have an excellent community, as everybody knows, because you are the community. And I often hear about different members hopping on calls and helping other people. But we also introduced something recently. We call it Pick Our Brains. And basically what it is a paid support session, but it's a one-off, right? It's not usually with myself. It's usually with one of the team, and it's the team person is picked based on what your needs are. It's only half an hour long, and you can use the time to do whatever you want in an a la carte type basis. So we'll post that link in the Slack. If you want to take advantage of that, and maybe we'll put a little bit more information on how that works, but that is available to you as an option going forward. And I think this last question is kind of interesting, and I think it's actually probably something that Christina and Hassan are going to end up covering at some point in the future, and they'll do a much better job than I will, but I'll talk about this now. This came up this week as well. It says, I want to pass data from some HTML element to somewhere else. And they had 2 elements in their app, from what I understand the original question is. And they basically have this one element, and maybe it's some kind of an input field. And they have another element that's, let's say it's a calendar or something else, and they want to pass data from here to here. And how do you do that? You can pass the data from there to there, but I think Andrew answered this originally, but you miss a very important part is you miss the state. And the state is the data that is controlling the page at any particular time. So what you really want to do is you really want to pass the data into, let's say, we'll call it memory or the model, and then have your widget hanging off the model, and it'll automatically update if it's pointing to the model properly. right? So that's what we call reactivity. So let's see what that kind of looks like in actual code. And I'm going to jump to my demo file here, and hopefully I'm just going to free code this. So I have not got this pre-rehearsed at all. And let's see, let me just see what's on this page right now. Okay, so we got something here. Let's just turn this off. Incidentally, the preview page, you can use same keyboard shortcuts as FileMaker, Command B for previewing. Is it previewing? Command B? Is it? I think it's B. Yeah, Command B. Maybe that's not the same as browse. Yeah, browse mode in FileMaker is that. All right, so I have this page here, and I'm going to get rid of all of these input fields, and I'll put an HTML input field. And what we'll do is maybe make the HTML control something here. Basically, let's start off and let's add an HTML element. We have one right here. And I'm going to add let's add an input field. And if you ever trying to learn this stuff, this is literally what I do. I would go like this, HTML input, and I would go to W3 Web Schools and understand what an input looks like. And then if I wanted a little bit more advanced, what I do is I put view and maybe something like that. And then I see form input bindings, and I go, okay, that's cool. Let me just literally copy that. Let me just make sure, actually, let me just start with the V model directive helps us simplify the above. Yeah, okay. So I'm going to copy that, I think, or let me say, take a little bit more advanced one there. And actually, you can take this entire example here even, and we'll pop this in. And just a second here. There might be something wrong with my demo app. I often break it, and I might have done something here. I just noticed it's not loading here. So we may want to scrap some of this demo, unfortunately, here. Yeah. Yeah, you know what? I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to defer, because I was going to use my demo app here, and I might have broken something, and instead of debugging it right now, we'll push that back. And maybe Christina, on the next Friday live, you guys can start covering the ability of passing arguments and parameters. The basic gist of the answer to this was to be able to pass the data as an object. That was what I wanted to demonstrate, but I'm going to pass on that one for now. Okay. Does anybody else have any other questions you want myself or the team to field?
Charles.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't looked. I've been really busy. I know I asked this way back. Is there any demo files in the library on just exporting the table to just a CSV file?
Yeah, so that's going to take a library, a third-party library. I know Neil Manchester has used some. I don't know what the actual library he used was, but when he watches this, if he's not in the call today, when he watches this, maybe he can pass it on to one of the team, and we'll make up an example for you, right? Something simple there. What we have done to export to like an Excel file is we've used an actual library, but I think it was called CSV to Excel or something like that. One of the team can probably, whoever works in Demeter can probably answer that the best, which might be Andrew, I think. But it's not the greatest, that particular one, because it doesn't allow you to style the cells and everything.
So I don't care about styling it. I just need the raw, like, when you get a table back, I just want that data set exported into.
Is it the CSV that you want, or Excel?
CSV, I don't even give a shit. Like, CSV is fine, because not
Right.
everybody has Excel and stuff like that, right? So they can just.
Yeah, there are some libraries for that. Christina, do you know, have you done that by any chance, or Hassan?
I got on a call with
No.
Andrew and Neil, but his libraries were very extensive to do what he was doing.
Was there a
right?
paid one? Yeah.
No, I wasn't paid. It was just he was doing a whole whack of styling. There was a lot of stuff, and Andrew sort of said that it was going to take a ton of work to do it. And I said, look, I don't really need it as complex as what he did. I just need to be able to get the data out.
Right. So let's have a look here. Let's see. We want to, it's okay. This is interesting. CSV content in code URI. So this is an interesting approach. I haven't tried this, but what they're doing is they're taking the data. So this would be model.rows, right? Like in our case, and they have some stuff. And they're actually building a CSV file manually, like they're actually assembling the characters, if you will. And they're joining each item here for each, and that's an iterator, like with, very similar to what Christina was talking about earlier. And they're joining those items into these rows, and then they're adding a carriage return manually. And then, or the shorter way, using arrow functions. Okay, he's just doing that. Then you can use JavaScript's window.open and encode the URL. If you want to kick around here, let's just try this real quick here. Let's just see, because this, I've never seen this mechanism, but it may be a really, really easy. Crud, my thing is broken here. It may be a real easy way of doing that. So maybe what we can do is, I won't do it right now, but I'll do it after we end the recording, and we'll see if we can implement this, because this looks pretty simple and it looks like it's fairly elegant. Yeah, so it looks like it's actually pretty easy, Dave, based on what I'm seeing here. And the trick that they're using is they're encoding it manually using a data URI. And then they're opening up that big blob, big URL, data encoded URL, into a new tab, which the browser is recognizing. And then that gives you your CSV file. And that looks like it would work. So.
Okay.
Right, this is somebody for Explorer 11, but yeah, so definitely we'll check that out.
Have you used Sheet.js, Charles?
I haven't, but I've seen it before.
I've used it in FileMaker, but to be fair, somebody else wrote the script to do it, but it looked, anyway, there's another one, and they seem to have quite good demos there. And I think there's a free edition.
So let's have a look. What kinds of things do they have? A demo's worth 1,000 words.
I know it works because I've got a script that I just copy and paste now, and that's great. And that one specifically needed Excel, but I think you can just do CSV.
Right. So that's cool. So I mean, these libraries are super easy to use. We have some stuff in our docs on using like a VCal, an example of a library, but we use libraries all the time. And basically the gist is you find the CDN for it. And you include that CDN in the DOM headers, and then you start to call that widget. And the way you call the widget, to bind it to your FileMaker data, which is effectively the model, you just use a function. So this is interesting. I wonder if there's a good demo that we could throw into our demo examples. If there's one in particular that would be interesting, like something that really shows off the features of that, we'd be happy to add that in. Does anybody else use any cool libraries? All right. I am going to jump. We're going to finish up our main sections of stuff here, and we're going to jump to our draw. And I think these are people, basically the way the draw works. Hold on for a second. I'll show you what we're going to win. Got a bunch of cool items here, some BetterForms t-shirts and some coasters and some other swag, some stickers and things like that. So Madeleine will get in contact with you. The way this works is you have to be present to win. So you have to have stuck it out. So we'll give it a go. And Natalie, is Natalie in their group today? Doesn't look like, right? All right, strike one. Boom. Let's try again. Dave is kicking his butt there. He's seen it just go by, huh? All right, and Jason, is Jason here? Doesn't look like it anymore, so we're gonna, he's gone too. All right. Mark was here. I don't know if he's left. Oh no, who is it? Sorry, Neil. Neil is here? No. Okay. These are all people who registered, so they may have, you know, jumped off and such. Russell, are you there, Rusty? I see Rusty here. Rusty, are you around? He did just unmute, so I'm going to assume that he's he's there. So congratulations, Rusty, and one of the team will get a hold of you, Madeleine, most likely.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, all good.
All right. Thanks.
Okay, I am going to finish up, and we're going to kick around. Feel free to kick around, ask any other questions. Next month, we're going to hopefully get together some big app builders in the community, and we want to talk about selling and reselling BetterForms and FileMaker to clients, and how they go about project management a little bit, and approach that whole side of things, and where some of these bigger dev houses are going. So we're going to hopefully have some great guests on for next week. All right, thanks again.